Hello and welcome back to the Second Take Podcast. My name is Calvin Williams. I'm here with my co-host Marco Rogers. Today we have a very nice episode of recapping college football and the NFL, as well as predicting college football and the NFL, like we do every single week. So we're going to start it off with college football Week 9 recap. First of all, Marco, let's start it off.
So to start off, number 4, Michigan beats Michigan State. Early on, Michigan didn't look great. We weren't scoring in the red zone. A fumble by Cornelius Johnson. And the only problem defensively was we couldn't guard Keon Coleman. I mean, he's a 6'6" basketball player. He can jump super high. And our tallest corner is 6'2" Jermon Green. And he was getting mossed on back-to-back plays. Safety help wasn't getting there in time. They could just lob it up to him. He would catch it. And that's how they scored, but they did not score after the first quarter. Michigan dominated. They were getting in the red zone, weren't scoring touchdowns, but were getting field goals and completely dominated this game.
Yeah, I would definitely say the scoreboard was uncharacteristic of this, of how much of a domination this was, just because of how many field goals that Michigan kicked. And I know this is something that Michigan needs to fix, but it's definitely good that we were able to move the ball down the field. All right, next up we have Notre Dame beating number 16 Syracuse, and although they have not had that good of a season as of yet, they had a really great win here, and they're definitely looking like a threat to Clemson next week. Margo?
Yeah, I mean, very solid game. Drew Pine, 9 for 19, 116 yards. Not a very expected stat line when your team puts up 41 points. But, I mean, they have a great run game with Estime. Michael Mayer is still one of the best tight ends in college football, and this defense is really locked down. They'll give that Clemson offense some problems.
Definitely agreed. Next up, we have number 2 Ohio State beating number 13 Penn State. I mean, this game was very close. Ohio State definitely pulled away at the end, but Penn State was in it all the way through. They were leading going into the fourth quarter. Ohio State was able to score and then then they were able to get a strip sack, and the next play they scored a touchdown, and then they got a pick six. So it all sort of fell apart at the end for Penn State. But overall, they definitely were able to scare Ohio State, humble them quite a bit. And this Ohio State team is definitely not looking as immortal as a lot of people think. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State did not look – I think Penn State looked like the better team until 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. The only reason why it was really close in the fourth quarter was because JT Tuimalu had a deflection leading to a pick, a strip sack, which he recovered, and a pick six. That's the only reason why it was close in the fourth quarter.
Keep in mind, that was a D-end with that, so...
Yeah, and Ohio State, they pulled away late, but they really looked beatable here, and they did not look like the number 1 team in the country like people said they were.
Yeah, definitely agreed there. Next up, we have number 3 Tennessee beating number 19 Kentucky. Tennessee just continues to dominate. This is looking like maybe the top team in the SEC right now. If they're able to beat Georgia in this coming week, which we'll talk about later, this Tennessee team could be the 1 seed and will be the 1 seed if they're able to beat Georgia and win the SEC championship 100%. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, Javante Hyatt and Hendon Hooker, that duo is unstoppable. Will Levis, he had to have a big game here. He had under 100 yards passing and 3 picks and no touchdowns. Not a very good game. They just couldn't get the offense going. Defense stood no chance from the beginning. Tough loss for Kentucky. Tennessee looks like arguably the best team in the nation.
Yeah, this was just a sheer domination in that game. Next up, we have number 22, Kansas State, just destroying number 9, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State looked like a very overrated team in this one. And I'm not saying this wasn't an expected win with the way Kansas State has looked. Me and Marco both expected them to win this game, but we did not expect it to go like this. 48-0, Kansas State. Kansas State definitely looking like a very scary Big 12 team, even with those 2 losses. They're coming on strong. Last week, they had a loss to TCU, which definitely hurts. But Deuce Vaughn coming out of the backfield, he's got to be one of the most explosive backs in the country. This Kansas State team is looking very dangerous. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, with H.M. Martinez injured, Will Howard really stepped up. But I'm just confused how supposedly one of the best offenses in the country against a Big 12 defense, no injuries for Oklahoma State. I don't know how you put up 0 points in the Big 12 as a top 10 Big 12 team. That's embarrassing. You should be putting up at least 20 points a game in the Big 12, even if you stink. Embarrassing for Oklahoma State. This was arguably the most dominant top 25 performance I have seen in a very long time.
I agree. We haven't seen one quite like this, especially with the lower ranked team dominating the top 10 team like that. Next up, we have Louisville, my upset pick, absolutely destroying Wake Forest. Wake Forest finally proving how overrated they are. This is their second loss of the season. They definitely dropped down in the rankings after this one. Louisville looking like a solid team. Obviously, no college football playoff hope for them with those 3 losses. But, I mean, definitely a good team to watch out for in the future, especially. Do you know if they have Clemson on their roster at some point?
Um,
Oh, they do. Not next week, but the week after. Yeah, so that game will definitely be a scary one for Clemson, especially if Clemson's able to survive this week against Notre Dame. Marco?
I mean, if you allow 35 points in the third quarter, you're probably going to lose a game, and that's what Wake Forest did. ACC is pretty poor defensively, and this weekend really hurt Clemson. Obviously, that win to Syracuse was their best one of the year. Syracuse looked bad this past weekend. That win against Wake Forest looked like a good win for Clemson. They looked terrible this past weekend. Now we're really starting to see that Clemson hasn't beaten anyone yet.
Definitely agreed. All those high-ranking wins are just being invalidated week after week. Moving on, we are going to do our college football playoff rankings. Since we are recording this before the college football playoff rankings show, we do not have the actual rankings yet, but me and Marco are going to do ours. So, Marco, you want to take 1 through 4?
Oh yeah, so 1 through 4, I think Tennessee and Georgia are probably the undisputed 1 or 2. I think winner of that game takes 1, loser probably takes 2, unless one of the teams dominates. Then maybe the loser moves down to 3. But I mean, they just looked better than everyone else. Tennessee has the best resume in the country by far, and Georgia, we expected them to be great this year. They have been. They beat Oregon by 45. Oregon's still in the top 10. They've looked good. The only game they've really struggled in is Missouri, and we can maybe consider that a fluke.
Yeah. For 5, 6, and 7, first we have 5, Bama. Obviously that loss to Tennessee, close game, able to play it close. This is definitely a team that's obviously going to be in the college football playoff hunt. The only reason they're at 5 is because they're not an undefeated team anymore. And then after 5, we definitely have a huge drop off. Clemson, TCU. TCU is definitely a team they could be in there, but it's just hard to say with their current strength of schedule. With that Oklahoma State loss last weekend, they're really only, in my opinion, their best win is Kansas State for sure. So we'll see in the future how their season plays out. It's hard to leave out an undefeated Big 12 champion from the college football playoff for sure. So they could definitely be in there, and we'll see how they perform once they get there. And then, Marco, you want to take dark horses?
Yeah, by the way, my apology for forgetting. 3 is Ohio State, 4 is Michigan. I think winner of that game is probably going to end up easily in the playoffs. Loser has a chance. For dark horses, number 14, Illinois. I mean, they have a tough schedule. They still have to play Purdue. That's going to be a tough game. At Michigan, that's going to be tough. Then if they beat Michigan, probably play against Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. But if you're a team with wins against at Michigan and Ohio State at a neutral site, then I think it's hard to leave you out of the playoffs. They have one of the best defenses in the country. Chase Brown looks very good. Offense looks solid overall. They're a scary team to play, but I do think they'll probably lose to Michigan. And the other dark horses, number 8, Oregon, number 9, USC, number 10, UCLA, 3 Pac-12 teams. All of them have 1 loss. Oregon, I think, probably has the best chance because their loss was Georgia. USC lost to Utah. UCLA lost to Oregon. But I think if any one of these 3 teams wins out, and win the Pac-12 championship, I think they get in. over a one-loss Big 12 champ or a one-loss Michigan or Ohio State. So, yeah, those are the dark horses: Illinois, Oregon, USC, and UCLA.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be messy with all of these possible teams, especially all these possible one-loss teams. It's really just going to come down to strength of schedule in the end and who the committee believes is the better team, which is... and you can't really do anything about that. Can't control it, so just gotta win out and hope the committee's on your side. Next up, we have the NFL. Just a short little recap. Not too much happened. Patriots beat the Jets. Lions lost. And in my opinion, a not great trade. Trading T.J. Hawkinson. Today was the trade deadline, November 1st, and they traded him. I believe they received a 2023 second-round pick and a 2024 third-round pick. The Vikings, in exchange, got T.J. Hawkinson I believe it was a 2024 2023 third-round pick and a 2024 conditional fourth-round pick. So I think the Lions definitely lost that trade. But Marco, anything to say about it?
No, not really. I mean, Patriots got the one against the Jets. Was pretty ugly. Pats did not make any moves at the trade deadline, which I thought we might trade for a receiver, which is probably our biggest need, but we didn't. By the way, Dolphins acquire Bradley Chubb. They trade a first rounder. That's probably the biggest trade. And they also acquired Jeff Wilson from the Niners. And I just want to mention Christian McCaffrey had a passing touchdown, rushing touchdown, and receiving touchdown. First time someone has done that since 2005, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is very impressive and very cool. Moving on, some NFL predictions. First up, we have Patriots versus the Colts. Marco, you want to get us started?
Yeah, I mean, Colts have been a pretty bad team. They've been pretty much similar to the Patriots, just worse, not as good defensively. I think Mac Jones gets back to where he was last year in this game. I think Matt Ryan struggles against this Patriots defense. Pats can run the ball. Colts O-line gets pushed around by the Pats D-line. Taylor can't really move anywhere. I got Pats here by 10.
Yeah, the only worry Patriots should have again for the Colts is the health of Jonathan Taylor. Do you know if he is back, or do you know if he's at 100% yet?
I mean, he's not 100%, but I do believe that he will be playing. So, I mean, I still think Patriots should be able to lock him down, as the Colts O-line is not very good.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and especially even with him not at 100%, Colts, I really like them, but they just do not have the pieces this year. Moving on, Lions versus Packers. Lions essentially giving up on their season. Their players we just won't be coming out of the gate hot. It hurts to say that, but we just simply gave up on the season by trading Hawkinson, and there's just not a lot of hope in Detroit right now. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, their leading receiver just got traded. Tank for Bryce Young, that's their only hope.
Yeah, agreed. And my problem with that trade was that we had all the offensive pieces that we needed, except a quarterback. And if we got a quarterback in the upcoming draft, this offense would have been very, very dangerous. And then all we would need is to rebuild the defense, which would just make things a lot easier. But instead, we're making it difficult on ourselves. In my opinion, Ford family needs to sell the Lions, and that's just that. But
yeah, well, one thing I would like to say is Lions do have 5 picks in the top 65 next year, which is very solid.
It is very solid. Next up, we have some college football predictions. We're gonna end it off with number 2 versus number 1, Tennessee versus Georgia. So we're gonna do that one last. But we'll start off with number 4, Michigan at Rutgers. This shouldn't be a close game at all. Rutgers 4-4. Every year they show flashes of being decent, or they're just terrible. This year 4-4. Pretty average, obviously 500. But I would say Michigan is going to come in here, dominate, get some guys in, hopefully get some rest before a tough stretch of games coming up.
Yeah, I mean, this Rutgers team is not very good. They just lost to Minnesota by 31. I mean, they did beat Indiana. That's the only conference win. They do tend to give Michigan some scares in the last 2 years. Last year, we barely beat them. 2020, we were pretty bad. Beat them in triple overtime. I think this is a game, might be close early. I'm not sure if Michigan comes out firing, but I think Michigan should win this game by 20 plus.
Agreed. Moving on, we have number 6 Alabama at number 15 LSU. This is a very interesting one. LSU obviously had a pretty rough start to the season, but they have been on the upswing the past few games, getting a couple wins in a row. If I were Alabama, I would definitely be scared, especially being at LSU. I have Bama here, but close. I would say probably by 3. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, night games at LSU are not something to mess with, especially when LSU is a very good team with Jaden Daniels and a solid defense. I mean, Bama looks pretty bad when they play road games. I mean, at Tennessee, obviously, at Texas A&M last year they lost. And I think LSU, this environment gets to Bama. I think this is going to be a very, very close game. I think it's going to be with a one-score game. I don't really know who to take here, but I'll take Bama because they're Bama and they're fighting for their season.
Yeah, Bama fighting their season is definitely one of the reasons why they'll be fighting out there over the weekend. Next up, we have Texas at number 13, Kansas State. Definitely a big matchup here. Texas has looked very good at times, giving Bama a scare. They've also looked very bad at times. So it's really just whichever way it goes. I personally think Kansas State's getting the win here. Huge win last week over Oklahoma State. Probably one of the better Big 12 Big 12 defenses that we've seen in a while. And this guy, Deuce Vaughn, is just one of the most explosive players in college football. So I'm taking Kansas State.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very entertaining to watch Deuce Vaughn versus Bijan Robinson, 2 top 3 running backs in college football, in my opinion. Blake Corum also in there. I think if Adrian Martinez is healthy, I think Kansas State wins this game with Will Howard. I mean, you never know with a young QB. Maybe it gets in his head. But if Adrian Martinez is here, I got Kansas State comfortably. If he's not, I think it could go either way. But I think no matter who's playing quarterback for Kansas State, I'm taking Kansas State. The QB just is going to change the score, in my opinion. It won't change the outcome.
Yeah. Next up, we have number 5, Clemson at Notre Dame. Marco, you want to take it?
Oh, yeah. So, very interesting game here. I picked Notre Dame as my upset last week against Syracuse. I do think there is probably a 40% chance that they win this game. I just don't see it happening. Clemson's going to be locked in. I mean, they know if they lose a game, their season is over. I mean, it is at Notre Dame, which is a very tough place to play, especially at night. Last time Clemson played at Notre Dame at night was when they were ranked number 1 in 2020. They lost that game. I think Notre Dame's run game runs it well, but I just don't think this Notre Dame defense is very good. I think if Uiagalelei can have a solid game, not a disaster like he did against Syracuse, I think Clemson wins this game coming off the bye week. They'll be hungry to win.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that one later for unspecified reasons. In our final game, number 2 versus number 1, I believe the first number 2 versus 1 matchup of the year, right, Marco?
Oh, yep.
Yeah, so first 2 versus 1, Tennessee at 2, Georgia at 1. This game will definitely determine who's 2 and who's 1, and who's going to set the tone going into the postseason for the SEC. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. Obviously, Tennessee and Alabama are on the same side of the division in the SEC. So even if Tennessee loses here, they're most likely still making the SEC championship, as they do have the head-to-head win over Alabama. But Georgia's making the SEC championship either way, because no one is really threatening them in the SEC West. So either way, I think both these teams are going to be in the SEC championship, but it's going to be really close. But I'm taking Tennessee here. Hendon Hooker has just looked too good, and this Tennessee team has been hard to beat. Marco?
Oh, by the way, Tennessee is in the same division as Georgia.
Oh, sorry. That's what I meant. My bad.
Yeah, so winner of this game is going to the SEC championship. I think that's pretty obvious. And I think loser of this game, I think if Tennessee wins this game, there's probably going to be 3 SEC teams in the college football playoffs. Even though if the committee doesn't want it, it'll happen. Because that would mean Tennessee probably goes 12-1, Bama goes 12-1, Georgia 11-1. I think you have to put Georgia in there. But in terms of just this game, it's tough. I mean, it's at Georgia. I think that gives them a bit of a advantage. But I feel like this is going to be a lower scoring game than people expect. I mean, Georgia's offense has looked pretty explosive this year, even though Georgia does have the best defense in college football. Everyone knows Tennessee is going to put up points on them. I just don't think they'll put up that many points. I think Tennessee's defense, everyone says they're bad. I don't think they're all that bad. I think this game will be in the low 30s, high 20s. But I think Georgia wins this game somewhat comfortably. I think they go up early. Maybe Tennessee has a little bit of a comeback. But I got Georgia here by a couple of scores. I don't think Tennessee is that good. I think they're very good, but I don't think they'll end up in the playoffs.
Wow. I don't know. I think if Georgia wins, it's going to be in a close one, but we'll see. Moving on, upset predictions. Both of me and Marco are 4-5. We've both been on a little bit of a streak. You got a win last week, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we both got our upsets, both won last week. I'm going to start it off. Notre Dame over number 5 Clemson. This is why I said I'd talk about it later. Notre Dame handled that Syracuse team last week that Clemson really struggled with. And even though Notre Dame hasn't had the best season as of yet, that Syracuse win is really forcing them onto their upswing. And I think their talent with those 4 and 5 stars will keep them in the game. And then I think DJ Uiagalelei, he's going to throw a couple picks, maybe strip sack. I think he's going to make a couple mistakes, and that's what's going to win Notre Dame the game. Marco?
I could definitely see that happening. I said Notre Dame has a 40% chance. Definitely a solid pick. Mine is Texas Tech at TCU. The 8-0 TCU, they looked bad last week, barely beating West Virginia, a bad West Virginia team. Texas Tech beat West Virginia by 40, while Texas Tech had their backup QB. I mean, Texas Tech mobile QB, going to be tough for a Big 12 defense to stop. I think Texas Tech's defense comes here ready to play, even though it's Big 12. They'll keep TCU to under 40 points. And I feel like the Texas Tech offense is pretty electric. I think if they can just game plan around stopping Quentin Johnston, they should be able to win this game in a huge upset and make it so the Big 12 will have no college football playoff teams.
Wow. Personally, I do not see this happening. I think TCU is a very good team, but I mean, anything can happen. This is college football, and we will see. Should I do it this week, Marco?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So, to finish off the episode, if Drew Pine, the Notre Dame quarterback, can continue to drop some dimes, Clemson's playoff shine will decline. See you all next week.
Well said.
Peace.
See ya.